Today, you are listening to our new episode of The Danger in Silence. I am Hannah Woodman here from the Helpline, and we have a lovely guest today, a licensed clinical social worker who I would love to hand over. We're going to talk about sleep hygiene. So, if you could introduce yourself, please.
My name's Amy Davenport Dakin. I'm actually a licensed clinical professional counselor.
Okay, let's read you. I thought you were at LCSW. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
LCPC.
I'm an LCPC, right? We don't want to start the tour 4. We know how that always goes. No, I am an LCPC, and I'm actually dually licensed. I'm also a licensed clinical mental health counselor in New Hampshire as well. So I'm dually licensed, and I have been for a long time. But I own and run New Perceptions, which focuses on the treatment and education for first responders regarding resiliency and trauma and managing stress and cumulative stress.
Yeah, I have come across your practice before this podcast, actually, from getting requests from somebody who was previously a first responder reaching out for support. And I was like, there is somebody in our state who specializes in that.
Yes, we actually have quite a network growing, which is pretty exciting. I've started teaching and consulting with a lot of clinicians to kind of spread the load. But my office is actually in Reedfield, but I do practice in Augusta as well. And it's exciting to see more and more providers focusing on this population.
Yeah, it's a definite need. And like we've spoken about previously, a place where stigma reduction is so valued and so important.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't realize, the number one killer of first responders is actually suicide.
Yeah.
Over any of the jobs they do.
As something that is definitely a topic that we should really invest some time and energy into. And it's really nice to know that there are people in our community who are focusing on that, because getting into some of these healthy habits, getting into seeing somebody who can talk you through coping strategies can be a wonderful stress relief to prevent any of those mortality rates increasing.
Exactly, because it is interesting, like being here to talk about the topic of sleep. It is difficult with this population because we're talking about a population that is extremely sleep deprived. And there's so much correlation of a lack of sleep with increased rates of depression and inability to overcome trauma and stress. So it's always hard to tease out, yes, it's trauma issues and exposure, but we're dealing with a population that doesn't sleep, doesn't eat well, doesn't, so their resiliency is already down, and the general population has more depression with lack of sleep. So there's a lot of factors at play here.
Absolutely. And we see lack of sleep amplifying a lot of these symptoms across the board. It's really the foundation of a healthy lifestyle is having healthy sleep. We need it so much. And with your population, people are, that must be really interesting because you can't necessarily have the same rhythm if you're on call, if you're staying a couple nights a week at a firehouse and then staying at your house the other nights. How do you help with kind of creating a more flexible sleep routine to increase sleep hygiene?
That is an important question because we are dealing with the population. And again, it depends on their role. Like some law enforcement, it's 12 hours overnight. A lot of career firefighters, first responders, EMS, they could be a 12-hour shift overnight, or they could be a full 24 on, then maybe a 24 off, then maybe another 24 on. Everybody's schedule is different within the state. But overall, right, we're not dealing with a consistent circadian rhythm pattern. The traditional, a lot of the sleep experts say we should always get up same time every day, no matter what, go to bed same time, no matter what. That's great if you're not having tones go off in the middle of the night. You're not, you don't have to get up in the middle of the night. Plus, the other interesting issue is when people are on, I'll speak from firefighter perspective or being in a firehouse or EMS, their brain's not going to fully sleep anyways. I always equate it to having a child in the house. When you have a newborn in the house where you're kind of alert and you're not going to go to sleep. So even if they do sleep, it's not a full, deep sleep. So to kind of answer your question of how do we do that, we're very creative. But we pull from a lot of things that we know help in regards to insomnia in general. and have them apply it there, because another barrier to being a first responder is we don't encourage medications. Obviously, sleep medications that are prescribed, Ambien, all that, you can't give a first responder. They definitely can't use it on the job. So they're not going to have the same interventions other people might. Plus, some people just don't want to go that route. They want to go a more natural route of retraining their brain. So one thing I'll start with is kind of the meditation. I'm big on mindfulness and meditation and the neurobiology of the brain. And some of the research I've seen, and again, we're learning so much about the brain and we're always evolving. Yoga Nidra, 20 minutes of Yoga Nidra, mindfulness meditation, can mimic a restful state in the body. But they're not necessarily sleeping, but they're bringing that nervous system down enough to be in a relaxation state. It's kind of like a lot of sleep experts say, if you don't fall asleep after 20 minutes, get up. And, it's kind of the same concept with them that we talk about skills like, well, can you relax and read? Maybe try to stay off your phone so that stimulation or agitation, if it's social media or whatever the case may be, is not there. But be mindful in the moment. Read a book. Listen to a mindfulness script. Do something that's relaxing, because if we can at least drop the nervous system, it's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. So, and being aware of their food, the nutrition's a whole other issue with that circadian rhythm, because if our circadian rhythm's disrupted, then of course our appetite's disrupted, and it can be a vicious cycle. But.
Yeah, I know their circadian rhythms are, it's so difficult with blue light, especially in this time of year, trying to sync things up. I know personally, I have for the last 12 years really relied on Flux, the app to use on your phone, which phone and laptops, to kind of change the type of light that's being emitted from your laptop so that it's set up with where you are in the world, like your actual location, which is really helpful. But that's just one little thing. And it's really, anything from being, even if it's small changes, like you're on a time deadline, like you're dealing with something really stressful, your rhythm's getting messed up a little bit, that can really persist for quite a bit longer. Do you have any helpful facts about like how you can be a little gentler and build up the proper, like your circadian rhythms correctly again and get back in sync?
I think from a general thing, it's one thing, if this is kind of what you're pointing to, is I even try to do this because I've had sleep issues my whole life. Anything we do, or even like reading or something like that, have a paper book. Try to get off the electronics or TV or I always equate it to, like, we have bedtime routines for kids. And we always say there's a reason we have a bedtime routine for kids, because it starts telling the brain it's time to wind down. We don't do that as adults. We're a very busy world. We're a hectic world. We go, then, I got to go to bed. We need the same wind down. So to answer your question, it's like getting back to routine. Kind of like, as much as we can, because I know it's a busy world. But getting back to okay, I'm done work by a certain time. I'm self-employed, so I say that for myself sometimes. I'm not going to work because that's going to stimulate my brain. I have to stop working at a certain time. I'm going to be off my computer at a certain time, or even the phone at a certain time. Start transitioning more paper things, or things being in the moment, things that make our body relax. Are those the kind of things you're thinking?
Absolutely.
Trying to get off that. So many people, myself included, say, I can't get off the electronics. All my stuff's on it. It's all I have. I read on it, do that. I've been known to say that. But it's like, you know what? I can find books to read at night and be in the moment. I can find other things to do than be on the phone. Our culture doesn't like it, but we need to get off the electronics at night, shut our brain down. I don't care what blue light blockers people use or whatever.
It's never going to be 100%. You're still, and even the idea, I think the memory of, if you're on your phone, like be like, well, but I'm only using my reading app. And it's like, but your brain is reacting as if anything could change. Like things pop up on your phone. You're still getting that stimulation.
Exactly.
And
And it's a reminder to the brain of what you do with that phone normally, like
right.
work or whatever. I mean,
It's like,
that
should
makes,
we look at our work
right,
Instagram like one more time to see how that post is
right,
doing?
right.
And I mean, it also is a great plug. Plug Hello Hello Books in Rockland, your local indie bookstore, to support them. It can be a great thing to get connected or visit your local library and try it out because it's a different experience and it's fun.
Yes,
And
yeah.
it's like a nice way to keep screens. I know people whose sleep hygiene I admire the most have entirely screen-free bedrooms. And I'm like, oh, I love that.
Exactly.
Like cell phones don't enter, computers don't
Exactly.
enter. We don't have any of the even like the photo albums that like rotate.
No
Like be like, no, no,
watches.
no, 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 no. It's all, yeah,
Yeah.
watches now. It's all aside from Fitbits. Some people
Right.
still
Because
sleep
then
with
sometimes
Fitbits.
people are like, well, you told me to watch my sleep pattern. I'm like, okay, that's fair.
You're like,
That's
oh,
fair. I didn't tell you to
I
do
understand
that.
where you're coming from there.
Right. But and even thinking of again, I use myself as an example, but even like my pleasure books, if you will, those are I look forward to it at night, winding down. That's my paper book that to just be there and be in the experience. Because there are a lot of sleep experts that say don't even have your phones for an alarm in your bedroom. The energy, it again, it's psychological component. Even subconsciously, we see it in it goes off an alarm in our brain. But you're right. Don't even have. I've had a doctor tell me that she's like, I don't even want you using your phone for an alarm, and I'm like, I don't touch it. I flip it over. I don't touch it. I don't want it in your room. It's
Yeah.
still in my room for an alarm. Again, I'm not perfect.
It's hard. I will admit I still have an iPad alarm that I use. And yes, I do have a classic alarm clock, one of the wind up alarm clocks to use. But you're always thinking, what if that doesn't go off? And so it is a balance. It's a
Yeah.
work in progress all the time.
It's changing those conditioning too. We have as a human being because we have an alarm clock, but I'm like, it's my phone. But yeah, just trying to. Again, I love electronics. I love the technology we have. It's a huge barrier too, but it's getting back to the basics. Again, we do it with kids still. We try to do it with kids still. And I'm not anti-technology and screens, but it's consuming our life and affecting our brain chemistry. So we have all this stress during the day and then all these other subliminal messages at night. Again, with the first responders, it's like I've told them, get a hard book or a paper book. And they'll read that instead or not be on the phone, scroll on Facebook. Again, I'm not anti-social media, but people don't realize the blips in the brain that go on. Even if you're like, oh, I kept scrolling even though it annoyed me. It still disrupts the nervous system and jacks it up there a little bit. And then you get, I equate it to drops of water in a cup. You get a lot of little blips. They're going to add up. And it's agitating. So,
Yeah. And we spoke a little bit before the record about nutrition, but I know that can be such a disruptor in just your body in general. Even just thinking about how you space out meals throughout the day. Like so many people I know have coffee for breakfast, have a light lunch, and then go home, have a huge dinner, and then go to bed. And I've heard many times on NPR, they're always saying, you could try eating like a Prince for breakfast and a Popper for dinner because just digestion can keep you awake and can interrupt your restful sleep.
that's true.
Do you have any insight or suggestions on specific types of food that you could eat to help wind down or a way to balance your eating throughout the day to create a healthier digestion system? Or because I'm assuming with people who are on call a lot, that's
Yeah,
really
or working all
not
the
knowing
time.
when you're taking your right meals or how much if you're taking energy drinks or those little things like
Oh, energy drinks. They're like, again, it's right up there with the electronics, energy. And again, I'm not judgy of much. People have their choices. But yeah, I think if we're in a culture where we're not sleeping and we're relying on energy drinks, and that actually makes things way worse.
Yeah, just seeing those. Are there any foods in particular that you've seen or recommend to just kind of substitute or help, or maybe like having oatmeal with your coffee in the morning, doing those like little changes to help with nutrition. Just because I know nutrition is something that you're interested in.
I follow that in regards to and again, I'm not an expert in nutrition. I have been certified in nutrition and mental health, but I consider it basic level. But I what I talk to a lot of people about, because, and again, this is anecdotal, other people may disagree with me. What I've always heard and what I've read is kind of the eating every 2 hours thing. It maintains our glucose levels, our sugar levels, which in turn maintains our circadian rhythms. And I don't mean like a big meal every 2 hours, but you're right. We get up, and again, I work with first responders. They live on caffeine. Caffeine. That's all, and drink coffee all day and then eat a big meal at night. And then, yes, that disrupts our sleep because all our energy is going to digestion rather than trying to regulate circadian rhythms. So I've always recommended to people, and again, I work with the population, they could be sitting down at the dinner table and they have tones go off. And they get very conditioned to eating fast because they don't know when the tones go off. So how fast we eat. But I guess in general, though, I always recommend like trying to eat every couple hours, whether it's a piece of fruit or protein. I'm big on protein, like good protein. Like I know like protein bars, yes, or meat protein. I know some people don't eat meat, but focusing on the protein, the omegas, anything with omegas that helps our brain chemistry and protects the myelin sheaths in our brain. Getting kind of the good carbs into us. Sugar and carbs aren't bad as long as they're in moderation. And try not to like carb load, because when that burns off, we crash even more. So I guess that specific like foods or how to eat, I always encourage people to talk to a nutritionist, but how often and what we're eating, and try not to wait till the end of the day and eat a big meal.
Yes, I had she was kind of our professor, but she was also the therapist at the college that I went to, gave me like a quick little trip where she was like, just think about the food that hums instead of the food that shouts, and then you'll stay
That's a good
a little bit healthier.
Yeah.
Like you'll move to like getting nuts, or like, oh, I really want like carbs. And that pizza shouting to me, you're like, oh, but what if I had like a bowl of rice instead? So you're still getting those like urges, because it might be something that if you're craving fish, you need omega-3.
Right.
Like think about what that's really calling to,
Yep.
and try and be, a little bit, and do it mindfully. And I think mindful eating at all, just like maybe it's,
Yeah.
someone else she said, I don't care if you're eating Burger King, but if you're eating Burger King and calmly thinking about every bite and sitting in the moment and quietly doing it, you're going to digest it better and gain more energy from that. Then she's like, I prefer if it was something a little lit, but we understand nobody's perfect. But
Yeah. And again, that's because we're in a very black or white society. Either you eat super good or you don't. That's why I always say I'm not perfect when I talk about this stuff. It is, and you bring up a good point. It's all about moderation too. We overindulge in our world. Like if you just have to have that slice of pizza, okay, but do you need a whole pizza? Or being mindful, because how fast we eat affects our digestion. And all this food stuff does tie into our circadian rhythms, because if we have a lack of sleep's linked to weight gain because we're not producing the hormones we need. Or if we're tired and run down, we crave carbs because we want energy. Yeah. So we tend to rely on the coffees and the sugars and that sort of thing. But balance. And that's why when I talk about sleep hygiene, I'm like, okay, I tend to know it's sleep too. I'm not saying go and just try to sleep solid, but how can you calm, be mindful, whether it's with eating or sleep?
love that. Just bringing those thoughtful moments.
Right.
And it sounds like a lot of things that can help with sleep hygiene are also maybe dealing with some of those stressors in your life, just kind of lowering the intensity of how you're reacting to things or eating things throughout the day can kind of see a benefit in better sleep at night.
Yes. Yeah. And water. We don't want to forget the water.
Love water.
I'm a water drinker, but it makes me think of that, because we rely on caffeine and all this other stuff, which is fine. But and I'm not a caffeine drinker, so I'm always telling people I'm not judging people, but water flushes a lot of toxins out of our body too. All the stress hormones, the cortisol. So sometimes, right, if we're at least getting the water, staying hydrated, dehydration can affect circadian rhythms and sleep issues. But yeah, trying to manage our stress, things like journaling at night, dumping our stressful thoughts. I have a lot of people, their mind races when it hits the pillow. My mind races when it hits the pillow. Historically, it's not so much like I noticed it with my first responders. The night before they return back to work, they're like, "Oh my God, I can never sleep the night before I go back to work." There was a study done, and historically, the number one worst night of sleep in our country is Sunday nights.
Yep.
People are headed back to work. So, I mean, we start our mind racing, thinking about and it could be great things too. Sometimes good things have kept me up, but writing it down, purging, getting it out of our head helps clear, our minds. Like, or if it's just like I'm famous for this too. Like, oh, I don't want to forget. Okay, I'll write it down, and then I'm like, okay, I got it written down. So I guess it's like taking out the trash before you go to bed. Get all this stuff out of your head before you go to bed, and then it helps clear our head.
I think that's a great idea. So maybe a few things to think about adding to your bedside table is looking at your clock and maybe taking away as much of those blue light or like things that are going to distract us, but bringing in some more paper products, bringing in some books, a journal, something to write with, something that you can keep by your bed that will maybe also, when you see it there, be a signal of like, oh, it's wind down time. Why don't I pick that up and start to think and journal and just kind of quiet down, get into that
Start
good
getting that
rhythm.
routine. And if people have to keep a sticky note, a pen beside your bed, or so if you think of something, you're not getting up and disrupting the routine, or you can write it down. Even back to the food thing, people tend to think, oh, I shouldn't eat after 5. One thing we know in sleep is glucose levels drop, and sometimes people wake up because their glucose levels are dropping or they are hungry. So maybe having a healthier snack before you go to bed can be important. Some high in protein, maybe a level of sugar, but knowing how to moderate some of those snacks or whatever too before you go to bed.
Yeah, I like to keep almonds a little container by my bed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can be a little helpful
Yeah.
thing. And then you're also not kind of jumping to something that is going to then exacerbate. Oh, you're not going to fall back asleep. Like
Right.
being mindful about what you're allowing into your space, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Just maintain that sanctuary feeling of your
Exactly.
room. It should be a comfortable place that you feel like relieved to be in at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Like, I think I do see a lot of wonderful, wonderful people who work from home and maybe work from home in their bedroom because it's
that's another thing. Yeah.
and you're like, hi, do you have any tips about making, if let's say that's the quietest room in your house, so that's why you're working in there. Are there some signals or maybe like putting up a curtain in between or something to make that room not feel like the
work.
automatically like switching back into work mode at the end of the night?
That is tough because, we ran into that a lot during the pandemic. Parents being home with their kids and they had no place else to work and that sort of thing. And now a lot of people are working from home, which can affect circadian rhythms because our brain's kind of designed to have different steps in different places. Like when I come home, it signals me to wind down. Now I work from home sometimes. So but I think if you can avoid it, avoid it. Because sometimes if people are creative, they really can or may know of another place. Or, kind of have maybe a little corner that's the workspace in the room. And then maybe put up, I can't remember what they're called, but one of those barriers or screens,
One of like
around
the panels.
panel screens around it. So you're not seeing it every time you go in. Trying some of those things, or maybe change lighting for sleep, or I like essential oils, or because smell is a strong trigger, olfactory, and maybe a certain smell at nighttime it tells the brain, okay, I'm in this mode right now. Yeah.
I like that.
Yep. Yep. So think of those relaxation thing. And the other thing, like just to kind of throw it in there to help with the sleep hygiene, we're also in a world where we don't play enough. We don't relax enough. I mean, it's go, go, go. Like some experts say don't work out at night. I know for me personally it works well because it burns my stress out, helps my body relax, releases all those endorphins. But doing something fun and relaxing at night takes our brain to a different place. And we don't play and have fun or create or anything anymore, as much as we used to. So have something to look forward to that's like, oh, relax. And it starts that brain winding down.
And there are a lot of things that, I mean, I know my roommate hated it a little bit, but I loved and my roommate was my sister, so she was very patient with me.
Okay, that helps.
But painting at night, and I had a job before this that was a little bit more high stress and working from home. Keeping, not in the bedroom because I was really trying to keep that as sacred as possible because I was on call a lot. Like you're trying to be like, no beepers in the bedroom, none of this in the bedroom.
Right.
And that's not always 100%, but we try our best. And doing something like fun that you can do even a little bit. Like I got little wooden blanks from a store that they make just wooden blanks for like little altars. And just bought a bunch of those, and it's just enough time to get like one coat done in like half an hour. And then you're like, that was like a fun little thing that I could enjoy, and then put back in my box and then work on the next night. And just having like something, I really like the idea of like making going to bed too, like something enjoyable. You're doing something fun to get your mind kind of out of this more high intensity mindset that you're in and just start calming down.
and it releases all this good neurochemistry in our brain too, the relaxation, the oxytocin, all of that stuff. And we don't do that enough. It's just go to bed, do it again. We're very high pressured world.
Yeah. Any good tips for if you are dealing with insomnia, anything fun in the moment to help kind of, if you've had like a shift that was really tough for, let's say, like, especially like a corrections officers who are often pulling doubles and then trying to drive home and get there, and maybe you don't have enough time to have fulfilling sleep, but you want to do something that at least is going to help your body reset. Any comments on, I know you talked a little bit about meditation. Are there any apps or anything in particular that you found or books that you'd like to kind of lead to for learning meditation or getting into the rhythm to start?
I think like a couple of things on that. I mean, one, like I always say meditation and warn people like I don't mean Buddhist sitting down clearing your head perfectly, although that's a great goal. But meditation, I want to point out too, is just anything that makes you be in the moment. Because a lot of people do tend to think of the, I can't sit down and clear my head. But something that brings you in the moment. But there's Insight Timer, which is great. It has yoga nidra on it, scripts, and a free version. The Balance app, I've had a lot of people like that. It just doesn't seem as busy to find stuff. Calm app. I mean, there's tons of apps out there that you try for free. I'm not thinking of books right off the top of my head. There's a great book, Why We Sleep, and I can't remember the author, but it talks about the neuroscience of sleep, which helps.
We can put that in the show notes.
Okay. Yes, it helps. It's really it's really fascinating. It's kind of dry and long neuroscience, but why this is so important, because I always say sleep is the foundation of our house. If the foundation isn't solid, we're not gonna have anything else.
Right. We live in New England. We know about quick clay. You got to be very sturdy.
And knowing even in the winter, I mean, for people to understand, even with seasonal depression and being tired, like at 4:00, we're mammals at the core. Our brain senses cold, and we almost go into a level of hibernation. We really do slow down in the wintertime. Obviously, we're not hibernating like we used to, but we're overriding all those rhythms of, we got to function until 10 o'clock at night, and we're fighting our brain. So I guess education, one thing I would say to my first responders, and they hate this, and I'm not anti-alcohol. I'll say this right off the bat, but One of the biggest things with insomnia, a lot of people resort to alcohol. They do. I mean, whether it's one drink or not, and again, judgment free, but again, there's a lot of science on this. Alcohol, it's a false sense of falling asleep. It's a sedation. And then people wake up in the middle of that cycle because the brain goes through a level of withdrawal. And I don't mean addiction. It's just the brain's like, where's the alcohol? So it wakes up, and then we have more insomnia. Mm-hmm. So in dealing with sleep, insomnia, being really stressed, like our culture's go-to for medicate with food, medicate with alcohol, medicate with phone, all those things that we want to gravitate to try to stay away from. In, again, moderation, but being aware of what you're eating if you're in that space. Stretch and yoga. I'm a huge yoga person. I push it for neuroscience. Stretching to release the tension out of our muscles. Hot shower. Maybe working out, like I said. I know people are exhausted, but trying to work out, get mentally exhausted too. The meditation. Maybe there's a favorite show. I mean, I'm not anti-TV. Maybe there's a show where it's like, I've always wanted to watch that. Try to watch that. Trying to do some of those things we've kind of talked about. Maybe go do something fun. Yeah.
Right. If you're going to be up, make sure that you're stimulating something that's going to be positive that can then naturally have that calm down period afterwards.
Exactly.
I know. Thank you very much, Amy, for being with us today.
Thank you.
And I would love to hear now. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but we like to have fun facts about ourselves. Would you have like a fun fact that you like about sleep or something fun about you and therapy that people might not think of?
No, I gotta really think. I don't know about fun that people would think of. Like, well, one thing, and the pandemic derailed that. Like, people don't realize this about me. Like, I love martial arts. I've done martial arts my whole life.
That's a very fun fact.
Yes.
What kind of martial arts?
Well, I started out jiu-jitsu when I was younger, and then I did Shotokan. And when I was living in New Hampshire, I was doing Ushiru. I do currently have one black belt. I was working on another black belt when the pandemic happened, and I had to get back into it. But I know people get surprised, especially being a therapist. They're like, "Oh my gosh!" But it's not about fighting; it's about self-control, and it ties into all this. So
absolutely, it's about like creating strength and understanding yourself, and
Right now I'm doing yoga because I've been hurt a lot, and I don't know if I want to do that anymore. So, but that's my fun fact. Yeah.
I love that. My sleep fun fact is just something I wanted to see. When getting ready for this episode, we were doing a lot of reading about sleep hygiene and fun. There'll be in our show notes, of course, the apps, as well as the book. And I'll have all of the articles that we found useful and helpful in setting up sleep routines. But I'm still staring where the camera is for some reason. But I also read that, of course, because we're mammals, cows are mammals, we're diurnal, cows are diurnal. It never occurred to me that if you can get milk that has been milked from a cow during the nighttime, it will produce more melatonin and be better for helping sleep. Now, you'd really have to track down a farmer that you know, figure out what this cow situation is. I think if you can hook up with Mafka and find a good farm, that you could get this done. But I was very excited about that fun fact.
It is. It's all the chemicals in the food, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
The processed food, I should say.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it and talking about something that I think we're both very passionate about, sleep hygiene. So thank you.
Not a problem.